Welcome back to another episode of Gridiron Lines. This is your host, Gary McKenzie. And in today's video, we're going to talk about the offseason. So, the most brutal time for football fans is the offseason, your 5 month long period where really there's no football at all. And I want to kind of walk everyone through the important dates this offseason to help us get through this summer. But before we go there, I want to start with a fan shout out. And I've got three fan shout outs this week. And it all stemmed from the armchair GM video that I posted last week, where I went over the salary cap and talked about moves the Chiefs might need to make to best suit their roster next season. So, the first one I talk about is from Brambo 5670. And they said Frank Clark will restructure and stay on an incentive based deal. They believe he thinks Frank Clark wants that playoff sack record, and they hope that Clark gets it in a Chiefs uniform, and they're indifferent about what happens to Clyde. Then we have one from Maccaberry, 1041, and they say with Patrick's cap hit falling in 2024, is it possible to restructure, extend Frank Clark on a deal whereby his cap hit is small this year and grows in 2024, 2025 when we have more space? So, to answer that question, basically what you're doing is giving Frank Clark an extension, pushing their cap hit down the road a little bit, um, and then hoping to have that cap hit take effect in 2024. And I think that's kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul, because you're still going to be you're still going to have to deal with that cap hit at some point in time. And I think it's better to handle it up front instead of continuously kicking the can down the road, because that's how you see teams get into cap problems like the Saints. So I think that in the Chiefs' best interest, as far as the cap is concerned, between Frank Clark and Patrick Mahomes, um, the Chiefs, if they do extend Frank Clark, they need to make sure the cap hit is spread evenly across that deal. So if he takes a pay cut next year on an extension, make sure that the cap hit is the same both years, causing a problem next year when Mahomes' cap hit's going to be higher. The great thing about Mahomes' contract is that in 2024, it dropped significantly. And I may be wrong. I may be mistaken. Maybe 2025 that it drops significantly. One of these years in the next couple of years, it hits about 50 million, and then it drops down to back to around 40 million. So the Chiefs, as far as contracts go, salary cap space goes, I believe these next two seasons are going to be the most difficult for them in regards to trying to find quality talent while also keeping them and paying them uh, because of Mahomes' large cap hit the next two seasons. And then lastly, um, Mark Wells, 5653. I'm going to go out on a limb and say Frank Clark will be back next year, whether cut and signed back or restructure. So if you notice, there's a recurring theme here. And in my video last week, I said that I believe the Chiefs are going to cut Frank Clark. They currently he'll currently have a cap hit of $30 million going into next season, and his dead money is worth about 8 or 9 million. So if they cut Frank Clark, they gain $21 million. So I think that the only reason you cut Frank Clark, if you're the Chiefs right now, is if you think you can bring other players in that will benefit the team more than Frank Clark can. And I think the Chiefs are going to go that direction. They could also extend Chris Jones and reduce his cap hit. So you could do one or the other. You could cut Frank Clark, or you could extend Chris Jones, or you could do both. But if they just extend Chris Jones and kept Frank Clark, then they should have some room to make some moves on the team. There's other things they could do as well. I mean, they could try to trade MVS, who has an $11 million cap hit and $7 million in dead money. But if I was a betting man, which I am, I would put my money on Frank Clark not being a Chief in in the 2023 season. So that's just my take on it. That's what I think the team is going to do. We'll see what happens. Obviously, I love Frank Clark as a player. He's clutch in the playoffs. He's, close to breaking the all-time postseason sack record, and that's about all you need to know about Frank Clark and who he is as a player. But I think for financial reasons, the Chiefs are going to move on from Frank Clark this offseason. But that's just my opinion. We'll see what happens. Once again, I just want to say thank you to each fan or each viewer who has commented, on YouTube. I do read the comments. It's great to follow up with them. You guys keep me honest. So keep doing your great work. And as always, if you like what you see here, make sure you like the video and then subscribe if you've not done so already. I haven't checked our subscriber count, but I know we have been trying to get to 30,000 and we're slowly making it there, but any help we can get is much appreciated. So on to the Chiefs offseason schedule. So the first offseason date that we need to be aware of is February 21st. And on February 21st, this is when teams can elect to use the franchise tag. So that's when that franchise tag window opens. It'll close in March, but the only player on the Chiefs team whom I've heard the team perhaps franchising is Orlando Brown Jr. And the franchise tag works interestingly, and I want to correct a mistake I had in my last video. So the way the franchise tag works is that it's usually the salary is based off whatever the top 5 players of that position are making. And then if you franchise tag for 1 year. If you franchise tag for another year, it's average top 5 plus 20%. So for the second year, you add another 20% on top of the already top 5 average contract. So I'm projecting that if the Chiefs were to franchise tag Orlando Brown Jr., it would be around $23 million for one season. Right now, the Chiefs don't have the cap space to do that. So the most affordable option is to sign Orlando Brown Jr. to a long-term deal. Sign him today. He's still relatively young. He should be coming into the prime of his career. He's going to command a good chunk of money. So we're looking at a contract probably around $23, $24, $25 million per year. He's going to be he's going to want to be paid like one of the best left tackles in the NFL. I'm not so sure if he is one of the best left tackles in the NFL. So the Chiefs have an interesting decision on their hands. Do they overpay for a position of need, or do they decide to use those resources elsewhere on the salary cap and fix other problems and then maybe trying to get a tackle in the draft? And I think that there's a lot of value in knowing who Orlando Brown Jr. is and what he's capable of doing, and having that person on the team who they can trust in versus going out and getting a rookie or going out and getting another free agent. So we'll see what happens. A lot of this is in Orlando Brown Jr.'s court. If he wants to be the highest paid left tackle in the NFL, I don't think the Chiefs are going to pay him that. So they'll let him walk. But if he wants to take a deal that's fair, and I think a fair deal is about $21 million per year. And we'll see if the Chiefs and Orlando Brown Jr. can get to that. But as of now, I'm thinking he's probably going to demand around $24, $25 million per year. And I'm not so sure the Chiefs are going to be willing to pay that. The next date we need to be aware of is February 28th. That's when the NFL Combine activities begin. And the NFL Combine activities will end on March 6th. So, Underwear Olympics, tons of players will be watching, looking for a late first round talent for the Chiefs or for players to fall. I wouldn't be surprised if the Chiefs move up again this year like they did with Trent McDuffie to get a guy that they really like that falls on their board. And we'll see what happens in the Combine. One thing I want to say about the NFL Combine and a team like the Chiefs and the other, I guess, bottom feeders in the NFL, the NFL Combine can kind of be a distraction to some NFL teams as far as their eyes leaving the tape. So what I mean by that is there's a player that looks great on tape and they're productive in college, but they go to the NFL Combine and their measurables are not quite that great. However, there's another player who, for whatever reason, didn't have the greatest numbers in college, didn't have the best tape, wasn't the most productive, but their measurables are off the charts. And so the question always is for an NFL team, would you rather have the shiny player that has the awesome measurables and then you believe you can mold them to be what you need for your team? Or do you take the tried and true player that maybe, they don't have the best physical abilities, but they're productive and they get the job done? And so a lot of teams that have the earlier picks, what they end up doing is they always chase after the team or the player with the best athletic traits. And then you have teams like this and the Patriots back in the day where they would focus more on players that were productive. They might not have had the best measurables, but they trusted their eyes on tape and didn't necessarily put the most stock into how athletic they were. They just focused on guys who were productive and got the job done. And I feel like the Chiefs are going to be needing to do that again in this draft. And you can find good talent that way. And I'm not saying that Brett Veach shies away from players that are high on athletic matrix. No, he loves athletic running backs, athletic wide receivers, athletic, players in the secondary. So he doesn't shy away from athletic players. But what I am saying is that the NFL Combine can be a bit of a distraction away from the tape, away from the production, uh, that some bad teams get in this cycle of continuously taking players that look shiny because they're swinging for the fences whenever there's a really productive player available that might have better stats, might impact the game more, that they choose not to go with. So that's my rant on the Combine. Then on March 7th, that is the last day for the franchise tag. That is the franchise tag deadline. So we're already in this window from February 28th to March 7th, where the Chiefs are going to either franchise tag Orlando Brown Jr. or they're not. So March 7th is the date we all need to keep our eyes on. If the Chiefs have not franchise tagged Orlando Brown Jr. by the afternoon of March 7th, then he's not going to get tagged. And maybe they're working out a long-term deal. So just keep your eyes peeled for March 7th. Let's see what the Chiefs do with Orlando Brown Jr. Then March 7th to 19th, that's when draft eligible visits occur. So each team is allowed 30 non-local physicals and visits from players who are entering the draft. And then from March 7th to 26th, that's when teams are allowed to have video and telephone interviews and visits with draft eligible players. So leading up to the draft, after the combine, teams are allowed to communicate, meet, give physicals, and host, visits for draft eligible players. Then comes probably one of the more exciting times of the off season, especially if you're a team that has some extra money in the salary cap. On March 13th to March 15th, that's when the free agency tampering period begins. So what do I mean by tampering period? That's when teams can contract agents, get a head start on free agency. Teams have the right to contact the player's agent, talk about contracts, all that good stuff, leading up to free agency. And then that's whenever you see those big splashes on March 15th when free agency begins, because agents and teams have had a couple days to talk and sort things out and make up their mind with where they want to go. So, like I said, on the 15th, that's when free agency begins. Who knows what will happen this offseason? You could see some crazy stuff. The 15th is also when the trading period begins. So teams can make trades at that point in time. And then lastly, also on the 15th, restricted free agents must be given their qualifying offers. And there's a lot of things going on March 15th. So the two big dates that we have so far are March 7th. That's when the franchise tag deadline is. And then March 15th, that's when free agency, the trading period, and RFAs have to be given their offers. So March 15th is another huge date this offseason. Now, March 15th, the trading period begins. And there's some talk, I've seen some folks on Twitter who want to trade L'Jarius Sneed and try to get draft picks for him. Honestly speaking, I think the best draft pick the Chiefs could get for L'Jarius Sneed is a second-round pick. And I say this because look back to the Marcus Peters deal. At the point in time when Marcus Peters was traded for, he was one of the greatest cornerbacks at intercepting passes at the start of their career in NFL history. And the Chiefs got a second-round pick for him. So I don't think that, if you think L'Jarius Sneed is going to get a first-round pick, he's not a quarterback. He's a cornerback. And he's not going to get a first-round pick. Best he could get is a second-round pick. And so I think the idea of trading L'Jarius Sneed is not a good idea. And to go further on that, if Sneed plays with the Chiefs next year and the Chiefs try to sign him long-term but can't, and Sneed goes and signs a contract with another team for around $15 million per year, he's going to fit to the compensatory pick scenario for the Chiefs. So if the Chiefs lose Sneed to free agency and a team pays him, which a team will, the Chiefs will get a comp pick for that. And so if you traded Sneed and got a second, best case scenario, versus if you kept Sneed for another year and let him go in free agency, you still get a draft pick. It just might be a couple rounds later than what you could get for trading Sneed. In addition to that, Sneed's cap hit is just under $2 million, I think. I mean, what are we doing here? You do not trade L'Jarius Sneed. No, under no circumstance do you trade L'Jarius Sneed. He is too important to the defense. He's the leader back there. He's the oldest player in the secondary for the Chiefs. And I just want to reiterate this thing I say over and over again, and that is Mahomes with a good defense will equal championships. So I want to keep Sneed, and if the Chiefs are able to sign him long-term, I'm all for that. So my goal, or my desire is for the Chiefs to have a really good defense with Patrick Mahomes. They still haven't done it yet, but I think if they were able to pull that off, it would be the greatest Chiefs team in the history of the Kansas City Chiefs. So if the Chiefs had a good defense or a great defense with Mahomes, all the other teams might as well quit playing because there's no way they would be able to beat Kansas City. And so for this reason, I want to keep Sneed. There's a comp pick involved if he leaves in free agency. No one seems to be talking about that. And so what do you gain by trading Sneed? You don't gain anything. You lose a season with a great player and maybe a couple of draft picks, a couple of rounds worth of a draft pick. And to me, Sneed's value is way more than that to this Chiefs defense. So I want to keep L'Jarius Sneed. Back to our calendar. After the free agency period begins on March 15th, there's a long period where not a lot goes on in the NFL. The teams are still able to host meetings with players that are draft eligible, continue to interview them through a draft process, etc. But on April 21st, that's the deadline for the restricted free agent players to sign their deals. And so the Chiefs' restricted free agents this offseason are Tershawn Wharton, Shane Buechele, Tommy Townsend, Prince Tega Winogo, and Jody Fortson. So I think the Chiefs will extend offers to at least 4 of these players. I think that Tershawn Wharton will get an RFA deal. Shane Buechele will, Tommy Townsend will, and Jody Fortson will. I think each one of these players will be given their RFA qualifying deal, and they'll sign it, and they'll be playing for the Chiefs next year. Pernstego Winogo, I'm on the fence on whether or not he'll get it. I think he will, but it just depends on what happens in the tackle market through free agency. So I'm curious to see what happens with him, but he'll likely stay as well. Pretty affordable player. Appears to be a piece of depth the Chiefs are working on. And I don't think they'll cut ties with him after, investing as much time in him as they have. Then the next date we need to be aware of is the NFL draft, which takes place April 27th, 28th, and 29th in Kansas City. And what a great time. Let me know in the comments if you're going to be there at the NFL draft. I'm thinking about it, but I don't know how much of a, crap show it'll be. If enough of you, say, hey, yeah, you should go. It's a once in a lifetime deal. I'll probably consider. I might come down to Kansas City and see what it's all about. But let me know in the comments if you're going to be at the NFL draft. But aside from that, that's all I have to talk about today. So my question to you in the comments are, what dates are you looking forward to the most this offseason? Another question I have is, do you think the Chiefs should trade L'Jarius Sneed, or is that just a really dumb idea? What are your thoughts? And then, do you have any draft crushes? I had some folks tell me players they liked in the draft. I haven't spent a lot of time digging up into players. I think one position I may look into this offseason are wide receivers. More to come on that. But this is Gary with Gridiron Lines. I've got nothing more to share. Showing this video to you and sitting here and talking with you about Chiefs football. With that, though, this is it. This is Gary signing out. Take it easy.
Thanks for watching this video from the team at RGR Football. Click these videos to see more and subscribe to RGR Football.